Today is Tuesday, April 21st, and we're continuing on in our lesson about Adarians, and we are on page 190 in your book, and we are, 191, and we're going to be discussing sea anemones. So, sea anemones are the flowers of the sea. In fact, they are in a class of animals called Anthozoa, a word which means flower animal. I'll go ahead and write sea anemone at the top. Like jellyfish, sea anemones have tentacles that contain nematocysts. Remember, those are the little, like jars that have the little pointy arrows and the poison. Okay, so they have nematocysts as well. Anemones use their tentacles to kill or paralyze small fish or other unsuspecting animals that happen to pass by too closely. Sea anemones differ from jellyfish in a few ways. First, the nematocysts of most anemones can't penetrate into human skin, so you can't feel it if they try to sting you. As a result, you can pick up and study most anemones and never even feel a sting. Second, anemones spend their entire lives as polyps. Do you remember the jellyfish started as a polyp and stuck, and then when it grew up to an adult, it would float away? Well, sea anemones remain a polyp their entire life. Sea anemones start out as polyps and stay polyps all of their life. Yet, another way anemones differ from jellyfish is by their brightly colored bodies. Like flowers, they come in an array of lovely colors and patterns: purple, red, yellow, orange, pink, blue, and even spotted or striped. So those of you in the junior journal, when you color, and I'm always saying use real colors or realistic, how much fun is this going to be? Because you can use red, yellow, orange, pink, blue, purple to color a sea anemone. And you can see there on page 192 and 193 a lot of the different colors of the sea anemones. Unlike the planktonic life of most jellies, anemones are benthic. Yet these little flowers of the sea can actually move. Even though an anemone usually attaches itself to a hard surface and stays there, it can move around by scuffling along on the base of its stalk. Some can even swim. Others can get where they want to go by somersaulting along the sea floor. Wouldn't that be interesting to see? Sea anemones prefer a nice spot on rocks and corals to catch the most plankton or other animals that happen to float or swim past. Have you ever played King of the Mountain? Children have played this game for years. One child is on top of a hill and remains the king until someone else nudges them off. So if you've ever played like on a leftover building site where there's a big mound of dirt and someone wants to stand on the top and you try to push everyone down, that's King of the Mountain. And we can imagine these beautiful flower-like creatures doing the same thing. Sea anemones war against each other for the best spot on the tallest rock. You'll see them pushing and pushing against other anemones to topple them off of their perch. As soon as it has victory, the winner takes its place as king of the mountain, but not for long, as others will try to claim the throne. Anemones react quickly when touched. In fact, when lightly touched, the entire anemone will contract, sometimes closing up if it feels threatened. The ability to close up is very helpful, as sometimes anemones find themselves too close to shore when the tide goes out. Thankfully, if the anemone is left with no water covering, it turns its entire body inside out, closing its tentacles inside itself. In this position, it can protect itself from drying out by preserving water inside its body. This is a defense system that protects the anemone until the tide comes back in. Jellyfish don't have this defense system, which is why they will die before the tide returns if they are stranded on the shore. Though they can't see, anemones can sense movement and know when something good to eat brushes past their tentacles. If that happens, a sea anemone will shoot its nematocyst into the prey. Once the prey is paralyzed, the nematocyst by the nematocyst, the anemone will use its sticky tentacles to grab hold of the animal and drag it into its mouth. Okay, so we have these. So we have, here's our rock. Okay, and so where does the anemone want to be? King of the mountain. Okay, so it's here with its little tentacles that float out because it remains as a polyp, and then something swims by and touches it. Well, that's when its nematocysts shoot out. Okay, now remember, if I were to touch it though, what's going to happen? It's going to contract and it's going to close itself up. Or if the water is here, but let's see, it's like this, but the tide goes out and the water is down lower, then it can close itself up and hold its water inside. I think that's really neat. Okay, if you were to spread open the tentacles of a sea anemone to see its middle, you would find a hole right in the very center. So if we could zoom this guy in, we would see a hole right in the middle of the anemone. This hole is its mouth. Stunned prey will be pushed down into the anemone's mouth to be digested. Any parts the anemone can't digest will be thrown out the same mouth hole. If you place your finger in an anemone's mouth, it will close its stomach around your finger. So if I was to put my finger in this anemone, I could actually feel as it closes its stomach around my finger. Don't worry though, you're safe. It won't eat your finger. You can simply pull your finger right back out. Most anemones are about the size of your hand, but they can range in a size from as small as a nickel, okay, to as big as 2 feet in diameter. So they could be about this wide across from the book to my hand. Okay, that's as big around as a couch cushion. Even though sea anemones taste bad to many animals and produce dangerous stings to those who come near, they have some friends in the sea. Certain animals produce a special coating of slime that keeps them from getting stung by the anemone. The anemone's tentacles become the animal's safe home. They form a wall of protection around the creature where no predator would dare come. If you see that clownfish is safe inside the tentacles of the sea anemone, and this makes us think of what movie? Finding Nemo. So you can see the clownfish. So the anemone is the clownfish's home because it has that special coating. The anemone doesn't sting the clownfish, so the clownfish lives in that anemone to keep it safe. And of course, you can picture that from Finding Nemo, I'm sure. The anemone and the animal living within form a symbiotic relationship. And we've talked about this word this year and what it means. Let me get on this side for you. That means that they each offer something to the other one, right? They are in a relationship where both people or animals benefit. The anemone gives the animal protection while the animal gives the anemone something in exchange. Are you wondering what the clownfish has to offer the anemone? Well, different animals give the anemone different things. The clownfish, also called the anemone fish, chases away butterfly fish that actually will eat the sea anemone. So the clownfish will chase away the fish that wants to eat the anemone, and the anemone protects the clownfish from the other animals wanting to eat it. The clownfish also eats parasites off of the anemone, keeping it clean. In addition, it attracts predator fish to the sea anemone so that the anemone can catch and eat them. Certain shrimp that live within sea anemones are called cleaner shrimp. They eat bacteria and algae that try to grow on the body and tentacles of the anemone. There is even a crab called the boxer crab that attaches an anemone to each cheleped and walks around using the anemones to sting small animals in order to eat them. The anemones then share in the feast. Sea anemones reproduce in 2 ways. The first way is the normal one. Males and females mate to produce larvae. The larva floats around until it settles onto a hard surface and then it starts to develop into a polyp. The second way that a sea anemone reproduces is by budding. Okay, so the second way they reproduce is by a word called budding. Isn't it interesting that they have 2 ways to reproduce? When a sea anemone reproduces in this way, a small bump grows on the anemone's body. That bump grows bigger and bigger and then pinches off from the body, settling onto the seafloor and growing into a separate polyp. So if it's budding, it just starts to grow a lump. It grows bigger and bigger and bigger until it separates, it falls to the ocean floor, and then it begins to develop its own polyp. That's called budding. This kind of reproduction produces an exact copy or clone of the original sea anemone. Do you remember another animal that can make a clone of itself? The sea star can do that as well. Whether produced by normal reproduction or by budding, a new sea anemone can live a long time. If you find an anemone on the beach, it might be older than you or even your parents. Why, it might be older than your grandparents. Anemones have been known to live up to 80 years. Good listening. Make sure you get all of the notes off of the board. And good job. Have a great day.